Gaming has been part of human nature since prehistoric time. As soon as apes had the ability to trade based off of uncertain outcomes, we have. As the process itself is quite enjoyable, being similar in response neurologically to that of crack cocaine, this possesses its own problems though, as those who know how to do basic math can use this proclivity towards gambling to enrich themselves beyond measure. This is one of many reasons that the practice has been heavily regulated, if not outright banned. So what happens when the taboo does not lead to restrictions? Where gambling is not discouraged, but encouraged. Where the industry becomes the backbone of an economy. This is the case of Las Vegas, Nevada. Here you are allowed to spend as much of your own hard-earned money on gambling without the worries of the state cracking down on your activity. Walk around the strip with alcohol in hand, and on your off time participate in shooting machine guns of the highest caliber. This laissez-faire attitude towards regulating its industry, as well as its lax rules, makes Vegas one of the most unique spaces in the world, being dubbed the entertainment capital of the world due to how special the environment is. This environment comes with its own set of challenges though, as the effects of allowing for such an institution are widespread and perverse, warranting some of the social stigma around the practice. Anyhow, gambling as a practice is one that is crucial to the identity of the territory. Let me explain why gaming is allowed in Las Vegas. If you want to understand how mega resorts and casinos became a commodity in the land, it is important to understand the state of its land and history. Vegas was founded in the mid-1800s. The territory was won by the Americans as a result of the Mexican-American War. During this time, Nevada as a state was much less developed, and the land was of little interest for development after it was first conquered. As the state as a whole is mostly desert, with a semi-arid climate, an environment where resources to build and maintain cities was scarce, as well as little reason for new settlers. What attracted people to the location at first was its position relative to Los Angeles and Salt Lake railroads, making Vegas a railroad town and a convenient stop between the two locations. As time continued on, gaming as a pastime became more and more prevalent, despite it being considered a criminal action at the time. A criminalization supported by parties such as the Progressive Party, a political movement designed to defeat corruption in our government, dispatch with monopolistic powers by our businesses, and get rid of inefficiencies in our regulatory body, as well as promote the welfare of society through social welfare and integration efforts. This was till 1931 when Governor Fred Balzar decided to legalize casino gambling as a measure to curb the effects of the Great Depression, making it the first state in the Union to legalize the practice, crystallizing what would be the start of a booming industry. With this new freedom, it was just a matter of time until business people took action to create the casinos we know today. The first of which was built by Thomas Hull, a California businessman who owned multiple hotels in the territory, finishing a hotel and resort named El Rancho Vegas in 1941. When gambling was legalized in 1931, there was but one rule to start a business in the field and to get a license. That being an American citizen, with everything being handled on a local level in terms of regulations. This did not last long though, as a state legislator foresaw the inevitable negative effects that came with the practice, as the practice attracted those with less than pristine backgrounds. A prime example being the story of Bugsby Segal, who moved from organized gambling dens in California on ships beyond the shorelines, smuggling narcotics and using his mafia ties to blackmail those around him, to building the Flamingo Hotel and Casino near the Strip, which ended in the death of the man due to him angering his bosses/funders as he embezzled their money for personal gain, as the costs associated with building the projects were projected to cost them $1 million, but in the end costed around $6 million in total. With incidents like these becoming more and more common over time due to how lucrative gambling is. As a result of the spike in criminality, the granting of licenses was allocated to the state legislature in 1945 and was regulated by the Nevada Tax Commission, who started the first tax on the operations of 1% on gross gaming revenues exceeding $3,000 in the state. But this did little to curb the problem, as the tax commission lacked the institutional power to manage the rapidly growing industry, as they only had the power to tax the industry as a whole, deny licenses, and obtain information on an applicant's history, with only one inspector and one accountant to enforce their authority, which was quite evident as the tax commissioner of the day, Bill Moore, in an effort to curb criminality in the industry and cheating by the casinos, summoned 60 owners of these businesses to a meeting to discuss the problem. Only 25 people actually showed up, in which he continued to sternly warn them against misconduct. In these conditions, change was surely needed. Thus, change came. With the pressures mounting on a federal level to do something about this, a 10% excise tax on casinos and sports betting was enacted. An act that was argued to be very crippling for the industry as a whole. In response to the threat of federal control over the industry, Nevada decided to self-regulate, creating the Gaming Control Board as a branch of Nevada's Tax Commission in 1955, with several divisions working as part of the organization to handle all aspects of the industry, with the board acting as judge, jury, and executioners on all matters of gaming in Nevada, and hundreds of employees to operate and manage the industry. All this occurred just in time for the industry to boom, making the job of the commission all but harder. So since the inception of the commission, how has the industry been regulated? To figure this one out, I invited on a man who is an expert on the subject.
I'm Greg Gimignani. I'm a gaming attorney in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm also an adjunct professor at the William S. Boyd School of Law and a lecturer at the International Center for Gaming Regulation.
To what degree do you think the criminal element still exists in gaming in Las Vegas?
Negligible. Absolutely negligible. I don't really think it exists at all, to be honest with you. You might see some, an occasional applicant that has connections, but if they do, they shouldn't apply. Gaming in Nevada is deemed to be a privilege, not a right. So you can apply for a license, but the Gaming Commission has no obligation to give you one. And they can reject you for any reason that isn't protected under the Constitution. Incumbent on the applicant to prove that they're suitable to hold a gaming license. So it's not that you apply and we have to show that you're a bad actor. You apply and you have an affirmative obligation to show you're a good actor. You'd have to be an absolute fool to try and launder money here in Las Vegas through a casino, because everything is accounted for. Our casinos have compliance officers and compliance departments that are charged with collecting and filing all that information with the IRS and with the FBI. Everything's on camera. You're going to get caught.
Do you think the negative components of gaming are overstated by the news and by think tanks? And statements related to it being a cheap form of taxation of the poor is a warranted statement?
There are other social costs to gaming, absolutely. But like I said, I think gambling is going to occur whether it's legal or not. But in those circumstances, it's occurring with an illegal operator. It's not done above board. You have no consumer protections and no tax revenue to offset some of the social ills. So I think regulated gaming is much better than prohibition, which just makes it unregulated gaming, and it still continues. I think state lotteries clearly, appeal more to a demographic that is on the lower part of the income scale. I think gaming to some extent will, but the big money in gaming here is in the high end. It's a guy that'll put $80 million behind the cage for a weekend.
If there was one regulatory change that you would suggest, what would it be and why?
The application process is fairly onerous. I think you could ease back on that some here in Nevada. I don't know if you looked at the forms for applying for a non-restricted gaming, but the forms themselves are, 70, 80 pages long. And that's just the questions. The answers will sometimes take bankers' boxes full of information. It's pretty onerous, and I think it makes us less competitive. It's heavily regulated, but it's heavily regulated because we had to do that. The original intent was to make sure that gaming was fair, safe, honest, and conducted by people who were suitable and didn't bring risk to the industry or the state. And you pay for your own investigation. So the application fee is only $500. But then you pay the Gaming Control Board for the cost of the investigation that they run. And you don't have any control over that. And some of those investigations run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
All of this seems to be more or less true, as the primary aspect of the Vegas economy that the commission has to deal with is its assortment of casinos and resorts, as the city has the most casinos in the world, with around 150 of them in the city of all sorts and sizes. The biggest being Wynn and Encore, a 215-acre resort that sells its visitors on its award-winning restaurants, entertainment, 2 award-winning spas, salons, and shopping center, costing $2.3 billion to build and is known for being the pinnacle of luxury. This luxury comes at a cost though, as the cost of staying a night at one of these 2 hotels will set you back anywhere between $351 to $502 a night, all the way down to Circus Hotel, being one of the oldest casinos in Vegas, first opening in 1968, and was also the largest casino when it first opened, attracting its visitors through its unique mix of attractions for adults and children alike, as it has your traditional slots, cards, and sports betting most casinos have, while having in store for kids multiple arcades, a carnival and circus, and an indoor theme park called the Adventure Dome. All this only costing around $30 to $45 per night to stay in its hotel, with every quality of resort in between around the strip, making available the authentic Vegas experience to all despite their income or taste. This widespread availability presents a challenge to the wider society as a whole, as the effects of gambling are numerous in its number and common in relation to its availability. More often than not, the participants in this activity lose money, as the people who run these organizations run games where the odds are in their favor always, with the most undesirable of the negative effects falling upon an estimated 1% of the population who are labeled problematic gamblers or addicted, which is a conservative estimate, as the reporting of the problem is reliant upon people individually self-reporting, who are said to be impulsive in their participation, restless in their joy when participating in this activity, and generous in their spending, as they are known to go well beyond their means when they do spend, with a reported attempted suicide rate of up to 20% and comorbidities such as anxiety and mood disorders, substance abuse, and multiple other personality disorders, with the presence of these comorbidities being reported to be much higher than those of other addictions, attracting 38.8 million tourists as a result, with 170,000 people being employed due to the casinos, making the industry one of the major economic backbones of the state, with the earnings of the industry being projected to increase year over year for the foreseeable future, as the industry within itself is an easy, cheap, and effective way to tax the citizenry with their own consent. So, how has the state decided to balance the pros and cons of the industry? as to not let its citizens get a taste of the criminality, mental health effects, and the loss of financial stability that is oh so common to this industry, while allowing for the massive economic gains that puts the state on the map. As of now, the answer is regulations. Regulations of the type that makes the operations of the business more fair for those who interact with the institution, but little for those who interact with the institution in an unhealthy manner, or those who live around them. In fact, if you go to the Nevada Gaming Control Board page, there you can see the list of regulations for those who own a gaming license, restrictions that apply to over 2,900 different locations, of which the changes in rules of operations have been mostly to increase the operational efficiencies of their locations and to make sure that the games in these locations are fair and represents the probability of winning correctly, as well as making sure that the finances of the organization are up to snuff. This is to say that little is being done to help those who are negatively impacted by this business.